Ayun. So far, sino yung may tanong?
Sir, ako po.
Ano?
Maganda po ba yung Money High?
Manood ka. Sino nakapanood na dito?
Ako, sir.
Sino? Pangalan? Ay, sorry, hindi ko kita eh.
Reyes po.
Ano?
Reyes.
Reyes. Parang hindi ko kita. Kate? Si Kate?
Opo.
Tinatanong ni Edison, maganda daw ba Money Heist?
Maganda. Yung tipong tatapusin mo yung isang season sa isang araw.
Ayan. Yun. So, ano yan? So, yun. Basta maganda. Maganda talaga. Ewan ko kung depende sa inyo, pero marami nagagandahan doon. So, Kate, kailan ba yung labas ng ano niya? Ng season 5?
Linggo daw po, tapos hindi na naman.
Kailan?
Dapat po yun ng linggo.
Oo nga, inaantay ko eh. Parang wala eh.
Kaya, waiting na naman.
Ayun. So, doon sa mga hindi pa nakakapanood, kung may time kayo, pagkatapos mag-aral huwag nyo namang uunahin yung Money Heist kaysa sa ano. Pagkatapos mag-aral. So, pahinga. Next. So, monetary, Kate, ikaw na magbasa nito. Monetary supply and payment system.
Monetary supply is the availability of financial resources for the deployment in the financial system. It is making the money available for use or for trade or investment.
Yun.
Money,
So, teka lang. Tapusin natin. No? So, money supply, availability daw ng financial resources for the development for the deployment in the financial system. Ibig sabihin, making money available for use para sa trade and investment. So, pakituloy, Kate.
money is expected to be regulated somehow to enable the sovereign to have control to its economy. Money is an essential factor in the financial system.
Okay. So, pakituloy.
For a monetary policy to be appropriate or effective, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas must ensure the following are present. 1. Alignment to the target goals. 2. Access to information. And 3. Responsiveness of the variable set.
Ayan. So, more on familiarity lang tayo dito. No? And in-explain lang din naman dito yung money supply and payment system. So, Kate, pakituloy na nito. Purchasing power.
Purchasing power, it is based on consumer price index. In economics, CPI is the weighted average value of the basket of prices of all commodities representing the market.
Ayun. So, when you say purchasing power, gaano ba, I mean, kung tatagalogin mo, ano ba yung kapangyarihan ng pera mo? Ano ba yung mabibili ng pera mo? So, basically, inaano lang naman yan. Iko-compare lang siya kung magkano yung value ng pera mo 20 years ago or depende in the past kung kailan man. So, kung dati ba, ano nabibili ng 50 pesos mo? Ngayon, ano na lang yung kayang bilhin ng 50 pesos mo? So, parang ganon. So, inflation rate, inflation rate, the degree of movement in the CPI from one period to another. So, inflation is equal to CPI sub 1 divided by CPI sub 0 minus 1. So, ano lang siya, more on formula. Pero, sir, magko-compute ba tayo dito sa subject na to? The answer is no, kasi more on economics related naman tong anong to. Pero, mas maganda, alam nyo lang din yung formula. So ito, more on substitution lang. CPI daw sa year 1 and 2 are 112 and 116 respectively. So computein mo lang, i-substitute mo yung nasa formula. So ang base year mo lagi is the prior year or the year 1. Okay, so 116 divide 112 minus 1 times 100. Ibig sabihin, ang inflation rate daw ay 3.57%. So ito, mag-calculate tayo. Again, this is just an example. Actually, galing nga lang to sa internet para lang mabigyan kayo ng bigger picture or mas ma-appreciate nyo siya. Pero again, hindi tayo magko-compute sa exam. Okay, pakibasa. Ikaw na rin, Kate.
First, we need to know how much of each good we're
Okay,
purchasing.
so, wait lang. So, kakalculatein daw natin yung CPI, Consumer Price Index, tsaka inflation rate. So, una, ano yung kailangan mo daw malaman, Kate?
first we need to know how much of each good we purchase each year and what the prices were.
Yun. So sa dalawang taon na pinagkukumpara mo kung ano mang taon 'yan, kung ano mang interval niyan, how much of these goods were purchased each year and ano daw yung gaano kadami yung good na nabibili mo and kung ano yung presyo niya. So dito, 1984, ang price ng 1984 ng isang burger ay $0.80. So wala pang $1, wala pang 50 pesos. And then yung 1984, ang binibili daw ay 40 pieces. So bumibili din siya ng pantalon, $24 naman, pero sa buong 1984, isa lang yung binili niya. Okay? Nagmo-movie din naman nung 1984, $5 daw. And then yung quantity, ilang beses ba siya nag-movie nung 1984? 4 na beses. So ngayon, then find the total expenditure by multiplying price times quantity and adding them. So sa madaling sabi, magkano yung total na gastos mo noong 1984? So ibig sabihin, 0.8 na burger, naka-4 na pong burger ka, tapos naka-isang pantalon ka, isa lang, tapos naka-5 beses ka, 4 na beses ka nanood ng sine. Magkano yung expenditure mo nung 1984? The answer is 75. So pinag-multiply lang to, ito and ito, plus ito times ito, plus ito times ito. Ang total is $75. Ngayon, kukumpara na 20 years later. Nabago na yung mga presyo, 2004 na, no? So, yung dati 9.8 lang yung presyo ng burger, ngayon 1.2 na. Yung pantalon dati 24, ngayon $30 na. And nagmahal na rin yung sine. Dati $5, naging $7. So, ito, assume that the market basket or the amount purchased stays the same. So, ibig sabihin yung quantity, okay, stays the same. Ang nabago lang talaga is yung price. Okay? Stays the same. It was in 1984. And the only thing that's changed are prices. Yan. Ibig sabihin, sa economics, ang tawag dyan is yung other things held constant. So now, what does the market cost in 2004? Use 1984 prices and 2004 quantities. Yun. So the BLS assumes the same market basket each year. So sa madaling sabi, ito na ngayon. Yung 120, multiply mo pa rin doon sa quantity niya. And then 30 times 1, 7 times 4. Ang total na niya is 106. So ibig sabihin, 1984, ang gastos mo is $75. 20 years later, yung pa rin yung kinakain mo, yung ganung beses ka pa rin, isang beses ka pa rin bumili ng pantalon, 4 na beses ka pa rin manood ng movie sa buong taon. Pero ang gastos mo na sa halip na 75, dito, naging 106. So, ayun, how to calculate the CPI and inflation rate. So, to find the CPI in any year, divide the cost of the market basket in year T by the cost of the same market in the base year. So, sa madaling sabi, 75. So yung 1984 muna, computein mo daw yung CPI, Consumer Price Index, in 1984. So, 75 yung gastos mo. Ano yung base year mo? Wala ka pang pinagbabasehan. So, yun na rin. Divide 75 times 100 is equal to 100 yung CPI nung 1984. And then nung 2004 naman, 106, syempre ang may pinagbabasehan ka na eh. Dito kasi wala ka pang pinagbabasehan. So ang base year mo is the current year. Pero dito, yung 106 mo na nagastos, ano na yung basis mo? 75 siya. And then 128. Okay? So kung dati 100, ngayon 128 na yung CPI. So ano na yung inflation rate between 1984 and 2004? So 128 minus 100 divide 100 is equal to 28%. Okay, so I think parang ito same formula lang to doon sa operation management natin last year, yung kino-compute natin na new minus old divided by old is equal to ayun pa rin. That's the inflation rate, 28%. So the prices have risen 28% over that 20-year period. If the period was 1984 to 1985, we would say inflation. If the period was 1984 to 1985, we would say that inflation was 28% in 1985. Yun. So siya may tanong?
Sir,
Yes.
Sir, bakit po na wala na po yung -1? Diga po current price index divided by base price index -1, then multiply 100% po.
So dito, tingnan natin, no? 128 minus 1.
Maybe because it was the 100 because the other example was very simplified.
Tama si Ken. Tama yung sinabi ni Ken. Kasi kung mapapansin natin dito, dinivide siya sa 100 eh.
Sa isa kasi siya.
Go Ken. Explain.
Considering that the other example was very simplified. Iniisa-isa kasi siya. So kung dito sa itaas, ipag directly mo siyang kukunin para hindi mo na siya ipapakita kung ano yung process. Yung -1 mo siya para makuha mo directly yung percentage.
Yun, tama. So well explained. So tama yung logic na sinabi ni Ken doon. Gets yun, ano? Abigail?
Sir, hindi po ako yun.
Sino nagtanong?
Sir, okay pa.
Okay. So sige, tuloy na tayo, no? So inflation. So in finance, inflation is the driver of finance cost. BSP is one of the credible agencies that targets inflation. Teka lang. Ano ba tayo sa waiting room? Naka-record na yata. So core inflation, this is most used for most economic estimates where it excludes the equation, the movement of the commodities or incidents with very volatile movement or outliers. And then kung headline inflation naman, so captures the changes of the cost of living based on the movement of the basket commodities as a whole. So kung core inflation, guys, anuhan lang natin to, it excludes the volatile movement. So it is more on economics term talaga siya. So just be familiar with its definitions and its differences. So kung core inflation, it excludes the volatile movement or outliers, and then kung headline inflation naman, based on the movement of basket. So yun lang siya. So payment system. So pakibasa. Shelo. So malapit na to.
Sir,
Go, pakibasa.
Payment system set of interrelated processes of settlement of goods or services rendered in exchange for a set of instruments that will undergo either banking or non-banking procedures. According to BSP, a payment system normally requires the following. 1. Standard method of transmitting payment messages within the system. 2. Agreed means of settlement. 3. Common operating procedures or rules.
Yun. So eto guys, sinasabi lang doon sa payment system kasi sabi ni BSP, payment system, meron tayong tatlong requirement. Una, standard method of transmitting payment within the system. So ano ba yung standard? So ang normal transaction, ang standard payment system niya is bayaran talaga. Bayaran tayo ng pera, bayaran tayo ng or through bank transfer. O kung gusto mo through GCash or through Paymaya. So that's the standard. But the most common standard is that yung abutan nga ng pera or yung bank transfer. So transfer mo sa bangko yung bayad. Pero meron din tayong tinatawag na agreed means of settlement. Yes, meron tayong standard method wherein pwede magbabayad ka naman talaga ng pera, but of course, or pwede nga naman na mag-bank transfer ka, pero ano ba yung pinagkasundoan nyo? So there are transactions na valid pa rin as far as BSP is concerned. Kasi nga, especially yung mga sobrang takot ma-scam or for example, first time transaction, first time yung magta-transact dalawa eh. So hangga't maaari, merong mga companies na sige, ang payment system natin is through check. Mas gusto ko on through check, more specifically manager's check. Bakit? Kasi kung through check or kung through kung through meron kasing iba na hindi na ayaw ng internet banking transfer. Pangalawa, mas gusto nila yung check and ayaw nila ng basta check lang. Kasi kung check nga naman, pwedeng tumalbog yan. Baka nag-issue ka ng check pero ang totoo wala, close na yung account or wala namang laman yung account. So kung ito ay manager's check, definitely medyo guaranteed yan. Mas gusto nila madalas, especially kung first time transactions, tas malaki yung amount and nag-create pa lang sila ng trust with each other. So manager's check talaga yung inaano nila. Kasi ibig sabihin may maganda kang credit line din sa bank kung makakapag-issue ka ng manager's check. More of anti-estafa na yun yung manager's check. Parang malabo nang mangyari na tatalbog yon. And then common operating procedures of rules. So syempre it's more on rules lang talaga. So like for example, kailan ka ba magbabayad? 50% ba? And then 100% upon delivery? Or kung hindi ka ba makabayad, may penalty ba? So more on like that lang. So yun lang yung tinutukoy dito sa payment system. So, tanong. So, kung na-gets, type gets. Tapos, punta na tayo dito sa next. So, kung na-gets, type gets. Ayun. So, sinong gustong mag-try magsagot nito? And then, pasagot and pa-explain. Answer and explain ha. Kasi syempre, nakuha nyo, may sagot na to nung pinost ko eh. So, raise a hand lang. Sinong gusto mag-try? Raise a hand. Wala? Tatawag na ako. Jim.
One problem of the too big to fail policy is that, sir, ano po, letter B po, increase
Bakit?
moral hazard by big banks po.
So, ano explanation mo? So, mukhang pangit yung signal ni Jim, no? So, who can explain? Sino? Ken?
Sure ba yung answer niya, sir? Yung tanong. One problem that too big to fail for policies is that, according to him, it increases the incentives for moral hazard by big banks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir, because when you say incentives, it's something that you can get back from the company, something that you received,
Correct.
you acquired. So once you regulate or you envision the moral hazard by big banks, you can secure this. You can secure ensure that your company will perform and have a stable competitiveness and consistency throughout the year in an industry.
Okay, Ken, balik tayo sa tanong. Ano? Sabi niya, isa daw sa problema ng too big to fail policy. Ano nga ba ulit yung too big to fail policy?
When you say too big to fail policy, because of that's why the government, well, according to the definition, it's something that once your company is big, it has the capacity to fail, and this is a kind of economic depression for them if they falter to compete the industry. So for me, one problem that too big to fail is
ano lang, pakituloy lang. So if the company fails, anong mangyayari? Ano ang gagawin ng government? Doon sa too big to fail policy, by definition, Sabi nga, 'di ba?
Sorry, sir?
So ano yung based doon sa definition ng too big to fail policy, ano yung ginagawa ng government if ever nahihirapan na or nandoon na sa failure yung mga big companies?
They will support. They will support, sir,
Yes,
because
yes,
they cannot allow
definitely.
a very big. They cannot allow or they cannot permit very big firms. That's why they regulate or they envision the possible risks.
Tama. Okay. So how do you explain the answer that it increases the incentives for moral hazard by big banks?
Huh?
Sir,
Wait.
Sir, karagdagan po.
Sige, ikaw, Mary Grace. Sige, thank you Ken ha. So malapit ka na, maganda yung sagot mo.
Sir, kasi po may nabasa po ako based sa costs and benefits of a too big to fail policy. Ang sabi po kasi sir sa cost, increases incentives of moral hazard by big banks who know that depositors do not have incentives to monitor the bank's risk-taking activities. In addition, it is an unfair policy because it discriminates against small banks.
So
Yun lang
ano?
po yung sabi sa costs and benefits of too big
So
to
ibig
fail
sabihin,
policy po.
so kung i-explain natin to, isa nga daw sa problema kasi meron tayong too big to fail policy kung saan laging nakasuporta yung government kung sakaling mag-fail itong malaking institutions na to. So ibig sabihin, isa sa problema nun is that pinapalaki niya yung incentive for moral hazard by the big banks. Kasi nga, ang mindset dyan is that, okay, ako, malaking financial institution ako. Take lang ako ng take ng risk. Bakit? May nakasuporta naman sa akin if ever mag-fail ako eh. So, ibig sabihin, take lang sila ng take ng risk, so they increase the incentives for moral hazard by big banks. So, yun lang yung yung pinaka-basic mindset ng financial institutions doon. So, wala akong pake kung sobrang laki ng risk niyan. Yes.
So in a nutshell, sir, they take it for granted.
Hindi naman
in a nutshell, they take it for granted.
Hindi naman they take for
as
granted.
Long as they get or demand.
Hindi naman siguro they take for granted. Siyempre, hindi naman sila din basta mag-take ng risk or basta magpapahiram ng pera or basta papasok sa isang risky investments. So siguro lumalakas yung loob nila. Ganon. Kasi alam mo sa sarili mo na may may magbabak sa iyo pag kung sakaling okay, pinasok mo to risky investment to. No, tatalo tayo dito. Natalo tayo ng malaki dito. So, kung matalo tayo ng malaki? Ayan, may suporta tayo from the government. Ayun, yun yung pinaka-mindset doon. Okay, so malinaw?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so kung next, sinong may gusto? Too big to fail policy ulit. Ramos? Pabilisan na natin guys kasi tayo last 10 minutes. 4 na question na lang to. Ramos? So sige, na lang, pa-raise na lang ng hand yung may gusto. Too big to fail policy, so wala nagre-raise. So sige, kaysa matapos lang oras natin pag-iintay. So exacerbates, so ito, wag nyong may katunog lang yan na bastos na salita pero hindi yon. So exacerbates moral hazard problems. So it puts large banks at a competitive disadvantage in attracting large deposits. So treats large depositors of small banks inequitably when compared to depositors of large banks. So the answer here is A and C lang daw yung tama. Kasi yun nga, ini-increase nila yung moral hazard problem. Nagte-take sila ng too much risk kasi nga merong namang too big to fail policy na ibabak sila ng government kung sakaling magka-problema. And then, they put large bank ba dun sa competitive disadvantage. This is wrong kasi they put large banks in a competitive advantage. Okay? And then, kasi syempre, ikaw nga naman, mag-deposit ka, malaking depositor ka, alam mo na ito, malaking bank to, hindi naman to hahayaan ng government malugi basta-basta. So, mas maganda, doon ko ilalagay yung pera ko sa malaking bank. So, they attract large deposit. So, in effect, hindi yan disadvantage sa kanila. That's actually an advantage. So, they treat large depositors of small banks inequitably. Yun. So, syempre, kung ikaw large depositor ka at doon ka nakapag-deposit sa small bank wherein hindi sila covered ng government kung sakaling mag-fail man sila. So, inequitably nga naman yung treatment sa kanila. Parehas lang naman tayong large depositor eh. Pero yung bangko mo back ni government kung sakaling mag-fail or kung sakaling malugi. Pero yung bangko ko wala. Okay? So, yun lang ang sagot dyan. Letter D. One way for bank regulators to assure depositors that a bank is not taking too much risk is to require bank to diversify loan portfolio, reduce equity capital, reduce size of its loan portfolio A and B or B and C. So, sino may sagot?
Sir,
Ken.
letter A.
Letter A. Yun. So, bakit? So, i-assure mo daw ng depositors that a bank is not taking too much risk. Kung parang ikaw, as a depositor sa bank, gusto mo lang i-assure na hindi naman na hindi nagte-take ng too much risk yung bangko mo. Explanation.
Because in a bank part, since that they knew the flow of the financial system, so they know how to secure or to put on your money in order to know the continuous process of financial system. For example, you deposit your money for them to know that you didn't take too much risk or you didn't take too much risk.
Yes.
You would secure yourself. You would secure that you have benefits. You are something that you can receive from them. So only for them is diversify the curtail or the avert the progression of any risk to come into the, so ginawa nila sir, desegregate, shed what you can get and what you can to ano yung makukuha mo, kung ano yung sa tingin mo is tataas yung possibility ng financial flow.
Pero ito, so ito naman yung explanation ko diyan. So parang ang point of view mo is that okay, magde-deposit ako sa bank na to, pero kailangan kong i-ensure na hindi nagte-take ng too much risk etong bangko na pagde-deposituhan ko. 'Di ba isa sa mga risk dito ng bank is the default risk, kung saan baka nagpahiram ng pera pero hindi sila babayaran. So in effect, baka malugi in the long run yung bank, tama? So ngayon, isa sa gusto mong malaman is that hindi sila nagte-take ng too much risk kasi let's say meron silang 10 million fund na pwede nilang ipahiram kung kani-kanino. Hanggat maaari, you want to ensure na this 10 million is diversified to the borrowers. Hindi mo gustong malaman na itong 10 million pinahiram lang sa isang tao, which is too risky. Kasi paano kung itong isang tao na to, isang tao na pinagpahiraman mo is siya pa yung nag-default. Siya yung hindi makabayad. So kawawa naman yung bank mo and in effect pera mo yun eh. 'Di ba? So yan lang yung pinaka-explanation dito sa diversify of its loan portfolio. So next, last two.
Sir.
Yes.
But for the reason that wouldn't they notify you kung magpapahiram sila? Aren't they going to
Definitely
notify
hindi.
you or
Hindi ka nila ino-notify but you need to do your own research. Kasi kung titingnan,
It's not fair.
Actually, hindi kasi wala naman talaga silang siguro as part of being an investor, kailangan mo din talaga you do your own research. Paano? Reviewin mo yung financial statement nila. Makita mo meron silang loan receivable. Pag nakita mo loan receivable, puntahan mo yung notes to financial statement. Kanino ba? Baka itong 10 million loan receivable mo, pagtingin mo sa notes sa isang tao lang. Makikita mo naman yung pinaka-breakdown doon sa notes ng financial statement, which is naka-enumerate doon. Kung hindi man lahat, At least yung top 10 man lang. Okay,
So
Ken?
meaning, sir, you have your volition. You have your volition if you're going to take a peril or not.
What do you mean?
I have a right. It's my own will or free will if I'm going to take the risk or to take the peril or not.
Of course, siyempre. Ganun yun.
Okay, sir, I take your point.
Okay, so last two. So last 3 minutes na lang. So wag na nating anuhin to. So ways in which bank regulators to reduce the adverse selection and moral hazard problems include all of the above. So ito, chartering process to prevent crooks from getting control, restrictions that prevent banks from acquiring certain risky assets, and high bank capital requirements to increase the cost of bank failure to owners. So yan, yung mga bank regulation that reduce adverse selection and moral hazard problems. So ano yan? So kung gusto niyo na review sa moral hazard and adverse selection, doon sa previous discussions natin. Ito, Ninja Loans. Ito medyo nakakatawa lang to, no? So wala to sa PowerPoint. So just prior to the global financial crisis, Ninja Loans were issued to borrowers. So ano daw ba yung Ninja Loan? So it is a loan issued by Japanese bank, thus avoiding US regulation. A loan document originated by mortgage banker named Bruce Lee. So a loan issued to borrowers with no income, employment, nor assets to speak of. And a loan issued with a martial arts clause. So ang sagot dyan is eto. When you say ninja loan, it is a loan issued doon sa mga borrowers na walang income, wala ring trabaho, at wala ring assets. So bakit nagkaroon ng ganyan? Kasi nga dumating dati sa point na nagkaroon ng global financial crisis. Sino nga lang ba din ang magtutulungan? So kahit wala kang pag-aari, wala kang kita, wala kang employment, pinapayagan nila mag-loan yung mga kahit alam nila na wala namang malaki yung risk or malaki yung chance na hindi ito makabayad kahit gusto niya. So ninja loans yung tawag doon. So ayos. So tapos na tayo. So again, thank you sa inyo for showing up and for staying until the end. So maraming salamat sa inyo. So expect a quiz, short quiz siguro next week, or i-announce ko kung meron or wala. Pero mas maganda you expect it. So maraming salamat sa inyo. Thank you for showing up again and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Sir, may meeting po tayo next week.
Meron. Bakit? Holiday ba?
Okay po.
Bye-bye. Patayin ko na.
That's so kind of you, sir. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you po.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po.
Thank you po, sir.